Welcome to the SEI Podcast series, a production of the Carnegie Mellon University Software Engineering Institute. The SEI is a federally funded research and development center sponsored by the U.S. Department of Defense. A transcript of today's podcast is posted on the SEI website at sei.cmu.edu/podcasts.
Hello, my name is Suzanne Miller. I'm a principal researcher in the SEI's Agile and Government team. I'm here with Hasan Yasar, a technical manager in our CERT division, and with Dr. Jose Morales, who's a senior researcher in our CERT division. They're here to talk to us today about DevOps, development operations together, in highly regulated environments, HREs for short. So before we get into that topic, which you know I have a lot of interest in, Hasan and I have worked together quite a bit in this area, tell us a little bit about how did you end up here at the SEI, and what is it about the work here that keeps you here? What is it that draws you to this kind of work? Jose, why don't we start with you?
So when I finished my postdoc in Texas, I started looking for new positions where to go. And I liked the SEI opportunity because it tied in academia, government, a little bit of industry, all of this one unique blend, so I can pursue my research, I can help government, and I can interact with industry all at the same time. That's very unique.
Yes, it is.
That is one of the main reasons.
Okay. What is the focus of your work today? You do things in unwanted software, which is a kind of an interesting way to talk about something we sometimes call dead code and things like that.
So I focus in two main areas, malware, behavior-based malware detection, and DevOps is the other more recent that I've added to it. I've been doing malware analysis since, 2000, maybe even earlier than that. The first malware I ever came across was in a Mad magazine. You remember Mad magazine?
Yeah, I'm there.
It was in there, and that's how it started,
Oh,
sort
my
of.
goodness.
So I've been doing malware for a long time. I like looking at runtime behaviors. That's
Okay.
how you can stop 0 days when
Right.
they first hit, when they first come in.
Yep.
The DevOps, I started about 2.5 years ago with Hasan, and it's very challenging because every group you walk into to try to help them set up a DevOps environment is a whole different set of challenges, whole different set of requirements.
Yes.
So there's no real recipe you can just rinse and repeat.
There's no one size fits all.
No,
Yep.
absolutely not.
Yep. Hasan, tell us how you got here.
Oh, it's a long story. And before starting SEI, and I was doing a lot of software development activities in industry, and I was even running a startup companies. So I had so much experience in the real world problems. I ended up SEI and part of CMU and get my industry experience and help
And
to
match
more,
that up.
help the more researcher side of it, and also helping the DoD. There is a big disconnectivity between industry and researchers, and typically researchers are producing materials. It's not a digestible format to the industry.
Yes.
And we're representing industry and coming from that angles. It's really helping go back to the community folks, which is kind of my old friends, let's say, or industry practitioner, and they connect the dot between researchers and then industry practitioners. Like, let's say we are writing a paper. If it is not used from developers or architect engineers, will be useless.
Right.
Typically, researchers are doing like 80% of the work done, but it is not ready to use.
Right.
So producing something through the SEI more useful into DoD, and same as for industry, makes more beneficial, more efficient way.
Right.
So that kind of struck me here. Since I started SEI 2010, we never really called it DevOps at the moment, but we have been doing DevOps work since 2010 when I started SEI. So as Jose said, and when we go any DoD clients or any type of industry practitioner as well, I have been running like all-day DevOps and DevSecOps and other conferences so far. Everybody has its own way of doing DevOps.
Sure.
Everybody has its own way of doing the DevSecOps or DevSec DevOps, no matter what you call. And we have our own way of doing the DevOps as an SEI.
Sure.
But I have been really telling to the communities, it is all about the process. It is not the tools. It is not a fad. It's a real. It's there. People are using it. It is a reality. So we have to take an advantage of that movement, make it better software, and including security, including other quality attributes as part of DevOps movement.
So the SEI does have a particular view of DevOps that we tend to call Are we calling it DevSec or SecDev?
Honestly, DevOps is the broad definition,
Yeah.
which is getting all stakeholder involvement, like a security folks and acquisition people. It's not only DevOps, it is whoever has to say something in the life cycle, they are part of the DevOps
Right.
movement, including program manager, including testing, including everybody has to say something. Even the legal department is also part of that movement, because what we are saying, we should have a continuous feedback from everybody, which are responsible in application quality and are responsible for application and operational, and also they are responsible for maintaining legality or any type of requirements of that life cycle. So that means everybody has to say something on it. And security is already a part of it. But apparently, we have to call DevSecOps to make it more attention to the security folks, because we don't want to left them a lot outside that initiative. Typically, security folks are thinking themselves outside that movement, because it's really coming after the fact. But we would like to bring them...
In the past, it's been after the fact.
Right. We would like to bring them into that DevOps movement, so we call it DevSecOps.
Okay.
And maybe you heard the SecDevOps name, Secure DevOps name. So last year, I was running a DevSecOps event as part of RSA. We kind of did a quick survey about the 900 people participants. So we said, what are you going to call? SecDevOps or DevSecOps or DevOpsSec or SecDevSecOps? So there's many definitions. So community really got the idea. They said, let's keep the security in between DevSecOps. It doesn't mean it is in between. It's basically throughout the life cycle. So as an SEI, we are saying it has to be beginning of the life cycle, throughout the life cycle, even though not really ending at the end. Still, we have to keep continuously monitoring the security activities throughout the production environment. So we have a continuous feedback.
The real-time side.
Yeah, we have a continuous feedback back to the operation, back to the development team and same as acquisition team. So it's really, we call this DevSecOps to get attention of it.
Right.
And same as right now, DoD is also called DevSecOps. So DevSecOps, it's keep growing as a common name throughout the communities.
I think this is going to end up being Dev bracket stakeholder X, because that's what you're saying.
I put the kind of curly parentheses. In my title, I said Dev curly parentheses Sex and Ops.
I mean, we're trying to integrate across a wide spectrum of stakeholders who traditionally have been a little bit siloed in the way that their work happens and in the way it's transferred from one stakeholder to another. So this is really sort of the mother of all integration environment.
Actually, if you look at the root of the problem, if you look at the waterfall paper example, it was written in 1971. We made that waterfall paper as a waterfall, very siloed process. So we don't want to do the same thing for DevOps or DevSecOps. We would like to create a more continuous spaces, more feature, and more interactive with the rest of the other team members, including security. Not at the end, every phase is if it is required. If I'm doing some sort of any feature development, I should get the security requirements right away. If I have a security requirements, I have to really carry out that requirements as writing the code, making a right design, making right testing for the components.
And getting feedback.
Right. So it's the overall process. It's one of the reasons, actually, and have been working with Dr. Morales, is getting his experience on the malware researcher and understanding the nature of the security problem, which he knows the bottom line. So why don't we get that operational knowledge put in the application lifecycle? That's our goal, is really having an interaction between, because we know what adversaries are thinking. We know what their mindset behind it. If we know that, what adversaries are thinking, what their mindset of cracking the systems or developing a malware, take the advantage of knowledge pieces, make it more developer-centric, more architect-centric. So eventually we will be winning because we can eliminate any type of vulnerabilities in our actual code we're developing.
And that's actually what all of this is about, is shifting things enough to the left that we're making progress early, getting feedback early, so that we're not waiting until, Jose comes in at the end and says, hey, did you know they really like to do this? And if we did that in the design, we could avoid that. So we're trying to get that kind of feedback into the early part of the life cycle.
Absolutely.
And not wait till the end. So that's kind of a message. All right, so DevOps, we've got a process, tooling. Part of the tooling emphasis on DevOps comes with the insight that when we are doing these iterative, sort of incremental developments, we're touching the code a lot. And so we need a lot of automated testing, a lot of automated integration to make sure it works. That's sort of a baseline for it. And then the processes that make that work so that effectively, so that we have the human in the loop when we need it, et cetera, et cetera. When we pull all that into a regulated setting, regulated settings include high security, high safety, high human, criticality, high mission criticality. These regulated environments typically have things that people have to do to be able to be certified in some environment. And in these settings now, getting that feedback on a continuous basis becomes even more important. What are some of the challenges that you all have run into when you take already challenging kind of integration of different stakeholders into an environment where we have people that are coming in and saying, I need to certify that you're safe or airworthy or secure for this environment? What are some of the additional challenges that brings to the DevOps problem?
So from the DevOps side, the fact that it's a high secure area already implements the siloing, isolation concept. And you walk into these environments and you find that every group, the devs, operators, QA, testers, whatever, they're all separated from one another. And that's ingrained into their culture.
Right.
So already walking into an environment that for security reasons is siloed, is isolated, already goes against one of the basic principles of DevOps, which is all stakeholders together.
Right.
Now, besides that, there's several other things that come up. You can't, in a silo environment, it's hard to have things like environment parity. It's hard to have a centralized repository of documents. It's hard to have a realistic staging environment that represents the production environment that whatever they're doing is going to eventually be deployed to. And those are some of the main ones that we come across. Another issue that happens in the DoD world is retention of contractors. Sometimes a lot of work is done by contractors and they're only there for a period of time, of which a subset is made to get them rolling into how we do things here.
Sure.
But then they leave and you have to bring somebody else in.
Right.
So there's no set process on how to get a newcomer into the DevOps a way of doing things that just flows with everything
You've
else.
always got to worry about onboarding.
What we've found is, in spite of all that, there are things that you can accomplish within these hardened environments.
Okay. So what are some of those things that you've discovered are enablers to an operation that is much more DevOps centered?
Before going to enablers, I have a couple other things to add, Susan.
Of course.
And let's open up the HRE a little bit more. HRE, it's available industry as well. Like if you go to the financial sector, they have similar type of constraints that what we are doing with DoD.
Electric power.
Right, and same for safety critical systems, even the health systems. And one of the DevOps, the thinking is a developer, they need to access everything, but you cannot really get that thinking in the financial sectors. And the Sarbanes-Oxley says you cannot get developer touching the production environment.
Right.
So when we look at the community thinking, it's all about the concept of you build it, you secure it, and you run it. It's not going to work with this highly regulated environment, which they have their own compliances, they have their own policies. You cannot get the developers are building and touching the production environment secure because they don't have a chance to go to the production environment. And how can they build it? How can they touch it? So we cannot really get what the people are thinking in industry, get into the environment. It is different.
Okay.
So we have to realize that the problem is different. When we look at enablers, there are many enablers we can take an advantage. One thing is we have been, when we go to any sites, we're saying you don't need to be like a delivering application every minute because your context is different.
Sure.
But you can take an advantage of DevOps environments, thinking about the environment parity and thinking about the sharing and thinking about talking the similar, the concept in the project-wise or the understanding of the tooling. These are the enablers. So take that principles of DevOps, collaboration principles, make it automation, and make an environment parity. It's really helpful for specifically HRE perspective because you don't repeat the same thing again.
And that's one of the things that we're finding in some of the work that I've seen in DevOps is this ability to actually do not continuous delivery. We're not there, but we're continuously providing feedback to different stakeholders, to the test people, to the security people, through what we're making available to them, and they're giving their feedback to the developers much, much earlier than they ever have before. So that seems like that's one of the things, that early feedback is one of the things that would to me, would drive motivation for these other stakeholders to actually be involved in DevOps. Are you seeing that?
That was one of the innovations that we had to put into place to be able to get end user feedback as quickly as possible, as soon as possible, along with CD and CI. You had
continuous delivery, continuous integration.
Exactly. You had to have within a siloed environment, a staging environment that was as realistic as possible to the production environment that they may not necessarily have access to.
Sure.
This is true primarily in adversarial scenarios. If you have the staging environment and it's realistic to what you're actually going to see when you deploy, and it's all inside a siloed area, you can do the entire DevOps process all the way through end user feedback within that environment, to the point where we can tell people, put operators or end users to interact with your staging environment if that's required. And those end users should not be anyone else working on the project. They're just people interacting, and you get feedback that way. That's more realistic when you go out. One thing we discovered was the end user a lot of times was considered to be the operator. Like the person who's going to use what you're...
Sure.
But in a lot of scenarios, we found that the end user isn't actually the operator. There's other people involved who are also considered end users. So inside the silo environment, we're able to emulate those with human actors.
Okay.
To be able to get real, complete end user feedback. If you don't have that, you're getting just a partial.
So I'm going to give an example that I know about. If we are talking about airworthiness, which is one of the regulated environments we have to deal with, and we're talking about pilots, and we're talking about airplanes, it's very easy to think that the end user is the pilot, right? And we get, it's fun to talk to pilots. But what about the guy that's maintaining the plane?
Right.
What about the people that actually have to do the training schedule?
Correct.
There's a whole lot of other end user stakeholders that need to understand how the system works, that need to provide feedback as it's evolving.
And what
So
we
that's
found
another-
was that was not the case in reality.
Yeah.
The end user in almost every case was always identified as exclusively the operator.
Right.
And you were missing a much larger pool of end users.
Yeah.
So like when you say operators in industry, it's calling more about IT operational people.
Okay.
But in the HR is maybe different because they are responsible for maintaining an environment, and operator are the actual users, so there are multiple user sets.
Right.
As Dr. Jose described, if we have a production-like environment as very close to the production, so we can do the continuous delivery. We don't need to have a continuous deployment.
Sure.
So continuous deployment goes to more the production environment, but we're
Right.
expecting to tell them, let's have a continuous delivery. Every build that you have made that goes to the production-like staging environment, then that other users, including operators, and they will look at, give the feedback. Then when it is ready, that the package can be done, either can be a container, can be other type of packaging tools that can push into another air gap environment, actual production environment. So when it goes to production environment, then operator knows how to use the systems because they already have an experience.
Sure.
They know what it is coming back to their pipeline. They're ready for operational purposes, for using, for training. It's very worth it to use that type of concept at the beginning.
So one of the things that we run into in Agile, DevOps, the whole sort of space of trying to reduce the time from concept to capability, is that we do have stakeholders within the DoD that are independent of the development and acquisition, in particular your DT, your development test, operational test. What has been your experience in trying to help those people to come into a DevOps pipeline kind of environment instead of staying completely outside of the development pipeline?
At least in my experience, we've worked primarily with developers, so we see it from their point of view. So we take into consideration these outside stakeholders who are not directly involved but do need to be aware of what's happening. And what we push for is overall collaboration through meetings, scrums, critical chains, emails, any other form of communication. They can be updated daily, weekly, sometimes even hourly. But we haven't been able to get to that from their point of view.
Right.
We're mostly dug in with the developers, and we work from there out.
Okay.
But some other engagement, we give them a pipeline. So we build up their DevOps pipeline. That DevOps pipeline will be transparent to the other stakeholders. Let's think about acquisition perspective. And instead of getting a hardcore requirements, to get the capabilities of the acquisition folks, which users are telling that, and get that capability convert into the either a sprint or like epics or stories as part of the sprint. That's how you start getting that work into the pipeline. So build a pipeline. The tool is ready. Tools is basically setting up all this integrated pipeline, Jira ticketing system, maybe other type of wiki pages, extracted build systems. Then let the other people, other stakeholders use that environment with the right process.
Right.
Remember you said about the process, because you may have a great tooling in the organization. If there is no right process, nobody can use that platform. I saw many examples. They set up a great tooling. They have a great pipelines. They spend money, tons of money. Everything is integrated. But the developers, they don't know how to use, or the acquisition people or a program manager are able to take an advantage of it,
Right.
which they should be able to go and pull up the report easily about the program or the project they were working on it. Still, they were bothering the developer, tell me where we are, what is the issues, number of issues you're working on it. But technically, all the program managers can look at the issue tracking system,
Right.
get the report direct. This is a process changes.
Well, we call that moving from a
Right.
push process to a pull process.
Yep.
Instead of us pushing PowerPoint slides out to you, you're pulling the data from the source
Exactly
of
from
what we're
the
doing.
source. Yep, that's the beauty of DevOps again. And similar for it's regarding cultural elements, like people has to share what they have. It's a discipline.
Yeah.
So like it's not really as the cowboy coding. We're expecting people has to be more responsive, because one of the elements of collaboration means we have to share what we have.
And we
So
have
what
to
we
communicate
find out,
about what's in it.
Yeah, what we find out, people are not really sharing. They're not really communicating.
Right.
So communicating means really not sending email, say, I'll send the email, I'm done, but you have to follow up.
Yeah.
So having a daily meetings example or having a collaboration portal makes much easier to communicate, because the information will be there.
Yeah.
And one other things we find out, as Dr. Rosa mentioned before, so we have people are turning quick, like leaving their jobs in 2-3 years. What they have to leave behind it is a knowledge. So how can we collect the knowledge is based on what they have done in the application lifecycle. So we cannot really put their computers in a frozen mode and get from there. We were expecting every action has to be recorded somewhere in the DevOps pipeline, either a note, or either a commit messages, or maybe project information, script, whatever they are developing as an artifact has to be in the pipeline, because this is giving an opportunity for the organization when the people leave, when the people go somewhere else, the knowledge will be there.
Right.
Somebody will come and take it and use it and continue.
And our government environments are often quite accustomed to this concept. I don't know if you've ever heard of the continuity binder. Is a concept when you change commands, when you move from one assignment to another, you're supposed to leave behind a set of notes that tell the next person in your job how to do that job. What we're basically saying is, instead of waiting until a month before you leave, you should be providing that all along the way.
Yep.
And that's so there are some concepts that we can actually kind of latch on to that are more traditional, but we're using a different kind of technology and a different cadence for bringing that knowledge together.
It's a technology also, it is requiring a discipline, as I said, the cultural changes. We may be able to take the notes for ourselves. If you don't share the notes with your peers, note will be useless.
Right.
And also one of the elements of DevOps is we have to have a feedback timely. So feedback has to be on that moment. We don't want to keep information for ourselves. We may fix something.
Right.
We may have many stars in our development team. They are great. But if they're not sharing what they have done it's useless. We have
Somebody
to get
could trample over something else that's done.
So, and share what problem it is, and changing about the problem, analyze the problem, and share the feedback amongst our team member and record it.
Right.
So we don't repeat the same problem again, because that's one of the things we would like to eliminate in the rework. We would like to eliminate any type of recoding, because we can use the centralized place, we can use the communication portal. We see what the teams are doing it together.
Right. And this is one of the connection points between DevOps and Agile methods, is this idea that we are doing collaboration and sharing all across the way, not just using the tools, right? That it's not just about the pipeline.
Yep.
Now, one of the things that I know about that we've had some success with in sort of these regulated environments is the idea of a continuous authorization, a continuous ATO, authority to operate. And I think that's probably one of the most, it's one of the innovations that many of our listeners are going to be very interested in, because it's a new way of thinking about securing what we're calling the software factory or the software pipeline. Talk for a minute about how that's playing into your research and what you're finding are the abilities to actually do something like that.
Actually, I was planning to have another podcast on this topic because it's really long. We cannot really cover up everything.
Just give us a tease. Give us a teaser, Hasan.
I can give you.
I can get it.
You want to do it?
Sure, I'll do that.
You do it.
So I have been actually giving a lot of talk in this topic. So if we have a pipeline is available as that you set it up, and all the, especially for ATO process, if you look at the risk management framework, it is requiring a continuous monitoring. It's requiring a continuous evaluation, continuous the testing. So what the information assurances people are looking for, give me a data. Data is going to show that as the developer or architect, you have a controller has been selected and approved, and as an evidence was part of the code. As an evidence, I verified because I coded, I tested out.
Right.
So two ways you can collect data. Either manually have a checklist, or as you said, like pull the data from the systems, which DevOps is going to give a capabilities platform that IA people or whoever the authoritative people are approving the application as go to the production environment, they can pull the data directly from the DevOps pipeline. Why don't we change the CI process, make it a security testing as part of the work they all are expecting, and get the result of the report from the CI server as maybe an email, maybe a PDF, whatever.
Come look at this.
Right. Whatever the information assurance people are looking for it, and create that data directly from the CI server. That's when we can do the authorization process. And other things like, as the elements of DevOps, again, for infrastructure pieces, if you look at all the controllers, are looking for infrastructure elements like what type of OS are we using, it is patch or not. Right. So these can done automatically as part of the environment provision, which is 80% of the authorization is done because we're not really replicating the environment over and over and again. Technically, we are repeating the same environment.
Exactly.
So whatever we're changing, we are changing on the application layer. Application layer is probably 20% of the controllers.
Yes.
So why we're spending a lot of time and money looking for the 80% over and over and again. Yeah. With the DevOps concept, it's already done. It's already approved. You just look for the 20%, which is only coding section that we have to approve it. So I'll talk about more in another podcast.
So we'll have another podcast just about that. But it is, to me, that's one of the most exciting opportunities that DevOps has given us, is that ability to stop thinking about we must look at the entire application stack every time we deploy to, as you said, I need to look at 20% each time I deploy new, but I continuously get feedback on the infrastructure and the pipeline, and that's pretty amazing.
Whoever done DevOps properly as a maturity level, and I saw that they were able to do more ATO, or if they are in the highly regulated environment, maybe financial sector or in the health industry, they have to do the same approval process.
Exactly.
There is no way, like as a developer, they can release the code go to production. It may be happening in 1 or 2% type of shops.
Yeah, this is not Facebook.
Right. It is. Yeah. I mean, honestly, like if you're in a compliance type of organization, if you're serious about your product, nobody will release any code into the production without giving approval. You may call an ATO, you may call something else, but it has to get approval. They may have their own type of controllers. They may have their own type of procedural things.
And they have their own standards that they have to comply with.
Actually, I analyzed a couple of compliance, like look for the GDPR, look for the SOX and HIPAA. And all of them are looking for auditabilities and reporting and traceabilities. Right. You can get all three elements as part of your DevOps pipeline, which with it is integrated, which you have a full traceabilities. Then, especially in GDPR, you need to really show the auditor that how you are taking the PII data as part of the pipeline. How are you going to assure that developer is not really touching the production? Right. Tell me. Either you have say yes, 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 but the person will be reliable to say yes or no to the auditor, or auditor will look at the artifact of the system, say, yes, I trust it. Yeah. This is the stuff we are looking for in the DevOps pipeline.
So one question that I know will come up for people that are new to this is how much time and effort should I allocate to moving over to a DevOps kind of environment if I've been in a traditional tooling environment? Because it is a different way of working. It is a different way of setting things up. There's organizational things as well as technical things. Do you have any kind of heuristic as terms of, start 6 months ahead of when you want to have your first deployment or anything like that would help our viewers understand that?
I couldn't tell you an exact calendar amount of time. The biggest obstacle that we find when trying to get DevOps into, I'm assuming any environment, but more importantly, highly regulated environments.
HREs are what we're talking.
Is the cultural shift. Now, when you go into an HRE environment, you have this phenomenon of people who are either military and they follow orders, or they're in a compliance setting and they follow process and policy. And they've been doing this for a long time, so it's very routine driven based on requirements that they need to follow at the organizational level. The HRE physically itself has its own requirements that you have to follow. We can put all the tooling in, we can make all of the recommendations. If you can't get the culture to shift, it's not going to work. It's just going to fail horribly. Right. One of the things that we do is we sit with them on a project for a while to see how it's working for them and where changes need to be made.
And also the other things we advise, and we work closely with our SEI clients, building up the pipeline along with the building up the culture. Let's say we're going to start from repository management, which is the 101 things in the software development ideas. Get the repository first. Let the people communicating, which is the cultural elements.
Right.
And you have the tools, you set it up, and now you have the cultural pieces, which is communicating the same repositories. That's how we start. And then after that, okay, now we're going to talk. How are we going to talk? All right, we have some ideas of the sharing. Oh, let's build up the wiki pages example. Oh, let's integrate into the repositories. Now, next step is we don't want to do any work without having any case assigned to me. Now we're going to build up the case management system. So building the cultural and building the tool works very well because they're learning when they're building, and also they're understanding about whatever environment they are in, and also they are finding the solutions by themselves because they're not really getting somebody else pipeline putting and then changing, but versus building the pipeline along with building the culture. That's the most effective way doing DevOps transformation. Build it, work together with the rest of the team member, and build together.
So what I take away from that is that I don't necessarily have to have a 6-month preparation process just to get started. We can look at where are the opportunities, where are the low-hanging fruit, how can we get some of the elements going in what we have now.
It splits in two ways. You have the tooling, which that can be set up and people can be trained to use that. That can be 6 months, 3 months, doesn't matter. For the tooling, you can sort of schedule it.
You can bound that, yeah.
Yeah. It's the shift in getting the people involved to now accept and adapt to this new process. That takes longer.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, we monitor and we watch and we check everything that we recommend to see, are you doing this? Show me. How's it working? Do you see it better? If the cultural shift becomes easier when people see benefits, it's costing less money.
It's taking less time. That's a big one
for
people.
We're hitting ATO faster. We're deploying faster.
Fewer defects.
We have fewer defects. We're finding them earlier.
Yeah.
When they see those benefits, they're like, oh, yeah, this is good. And that's what we try to follow. When they don't see it, we revisit it and try to
That's
modify.
we build it and then build the culture together. That's a really effective way. And also other things, like you said, when they can start, and all the stakeholders should understand overall taxonomy about the DevOps.
Yeah.
Because I see a more different type of definition, like especially for CI or CDs, continuous delivery deployment. Spend maybe a week, understand all these terminologies, and set a rule about the communications. Then start building. Okay, what's our problem? What we have our problem? So when we do the DevOps gap analysis for our client, we are talking with them to find out the problem. Most of the time, we are hearing from them. They're saying, we have a problem here and there. So basically, they're able to identify their own problems. So basically, we are guiding them to build up that knowledge, and let's build it. So a problem, let's go fix it. How are we going to fix it? Sometimes it's tooling, but sometimes you need to spend the time to understand that and build it. or sometimes build up the culture. So it's kind of like going hand in hand together.
I'll give you an example of a cultural issue that we came across that has nothing to do with tooling. In some cases, to start on a project, you have to get senior leadership to sign off on it. You know, they approve the money, they approve the work. In several cases, we've seen that part of the SDLC that a dev group is following is this: prepare the project, define the project, put it the paperwork, and then send it off for authorization, and then start working. When it goes off to authorization, there seems to be a lot of confusion up there. Different people start to claim, no, you shouldn't authorize this, I should authorize this, this is not yours, this is mine. You get this back and forth. We learned this from the developers. This type of back and forth consumes time, consumes project. It's a cultural shift that has to occur there. It's not a tool. It's not a piece of software. It's talking to see, well, why is this occurring in the first place? Is there a confusion into who manages who's in charge of what? Once we have that, it became much easier and much more effective. That fell. This is one of the key things in HRE. We deal with a lot of problems that we can solve with DevOps concepts. But we also have to deal with a lot of problems that are solved with non-DevOps concepts.
Sure.
And what we've learned is for every group that we sit with, we end up creating a tailored SDLC from conception to sustainment, post-deployment, with DevOps on top and non-DevOps as well.
Right.
You end up with a tailored SDLC for each group. DevOps alone in HRE won't solve absolutely everything, especially on the cultural side.
Yep.
So we combine the two. That's something that we learned along this journey.
So much of what we've talked about, we've talked about some other things, but I know that you have recently published a paper at the 2018 International Workshop on Secure Software Engineering, and this idea of DevOps in HRE was the topic of the paper. So that's one of the resources that our viewers can look at if they want to know more about what we've been discussing in the podcast. What's next? So we've dealt with DevOps, we've dealt with stakeholders of different kinds needing to be in DevOps, we've dealt with highly regulated environments as a variant. What do you see in the research side as things that we still need to research in the DevOps arena?
There are a lot of research areas exist in DevOps, especially looking for the deployment perspective and how can we get the containerization concept into DevOps pipeline with a secure mindset. And also how much we can do architectural automation as part of DevOps pipeline, because one of the big elements is you may have a great pipeline, you have a great culture, but how about for architecture?
Yeah, if it's a tightly coupled architecture.
If the architecture is not compatible with giving a build every day, and how are we going to build that systems and take an advantage of build process as automation process, because architectures will be a barrier.
Right.
And also, and there's another research we have been building up the return of investments, what really DevOps is bringing in the DoD. Because we know what industry is practicing, but we don't have a right data sets, how much money I'm saving, what's the long time, especially for systems of very complex systems. And that's another research we are working on it.
So you're going to be busy for a little while?
I never ever busy in my life since last couple of years by thinking DevOps.
I know. Hasan and I, the only time we get to see each other is at conferences and things like this, because we're both running around so much.
Absolutely.
All right. And Jose, you've been running around too. So
I run right next to him.
There you go. There you go. So I really want to thank you both for joining us today. I love talking about this stuff, and I think our audience has got a chance to learn a lot. We do have a series of blog posts that Jose has been working on, and so we're going to have those in our Insights area at the SEI, and you have a DevOps section in the Insights area on our website. So that's a place to look for some other material that relates to what we're talking about.
And plus other
here.
Community engagements, we have been running DevSecOps days and all day DevOps. Just follow us through the SEI website.
So all day, I'm gonna plug All Day DevOps just for a minute. This is a 24-hour period with a bunch of small presentations, electronic. It's all remote, and it's a hoot. I mean, you can dive in. You just dial up at any point and get in on what's going on the screen at the time.
I was awake 24 hours. Literally, I was awake.
I have not done 24 hours of all day DevOps, I will admit, but I have done a few hours.
Ready for 2019? We can run together.
Oh dear God. One year you ran it on my birthday. That was a year I only did like an hour because it's like, I'm not even at work today. So, all right. I want to thank you both.
Thank you.
We will include links to all the resources we've mentioned, the blogs, the papers, and there's more. Just go to the DevOps area and Insights and you'll get all kinds of things. So, and we will have more discussions coming in the future.
Absolutely.
So we will do that.
Thank you for joining us. Links to resources mentioned in this podcast are available in our transcript. This podcast is available on the SEI website at sei.cmu.edu/podcasts and on Carnegie Mellon University's iTunes U site and the SEI's YouTube channel. As always, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email us at info@sei.cmu.edu. Thank you.